Welcome to this explainer. Today, we are diving headfirst into a truly chilling local legend from the dark banks of the Hooghly River in Kolkata. We're going to break down the terrifying anatomy of a haunting and see exactly what happens when ancient folklore invades actual reality. So, if you're fascinated by how old myths collide with localized accounts of absolute terror, you are definitely in the right place. Let's get started. Okay, let's jump into this dark narrative by asking ourselves a deeply unsettling question. Seriously, think about this for a second. What would you do if the person sleeping next to you wasn't human anymore? It's a terrifying question about trust, perception, and the unknown lurking in the very safest place we know, our own homes. And as you'll see, this is the exact nightmare our subject today woke up to. Section 1. A Home by the Hooghly. You know, every solid explainer about a paranormal event needs a baseline, right? We have to know what normal looked like. For 2 years, Sanjit and Kajal lived a remarkably peaceful, loving life in this quiet riverfront home. There were absolutely zero prior incidents, and no marital strife whatsoever mentioned in the source material. It was an environment of complete and total normalcy, which honestly makes the unexplainable events that follow just so much more jarring. Section 2. Kajal's Bizarre Transformation. So almost overnight, we see a complete, deeply disturbing inversion of Kajal's personality. Before all of this, she was peaceful, talkative, and notably, she absolutely hated eating fish. But now, she becomes dead silent. She just stands at the balcony railing, staring into the dark river for hours on end, almost as if she's listening to something invisible. And most bizarrely, she begins to aggressively demand and consume massive amounts of raw fish, literally forcing Sanjit to go back out if he ever forgot to buy it. And it wasn't just her diet. The sensory details here are practically designed to build dread. Her wardrobe completely shifts to wearing a red sari every single day. She adorns her wrists with traditional white conch shell bangles, which produce this distinct, ominous clinking sound every single time she moves. Clink, clink, clink. It's an auditory cue you wouldn't easily forget, and it becomes absolutely critical to the horror that follows. Section 3. The Midnight Discovery. Now, things escalate super fast. On the very first night, Sanjit wakes up feeling like something is literally chewing on his shoulder, and he finds deep, unexplainable bite marks the next morning. By night 2, he gets up to investigate this awful animalistic chewing sound coming from the pitch-black kitchen. He flicks on the light and finds Kajal violently eating raw fish, her teeth smeared with blood. She actually pounces on him, and as he's struggling, he sees it. Her feet are facing completely backwards. No way, right? He just passes out from the sheer terror. Okay, so the next morning, Sanjit wakes up in his own bed. The house is completely normal. He desperately wants to believe it was just some sort of hyper-vivid nightmare. But then, he goes and checks the refrigerator. Exactly 4 kilograms of raw fish, completely gone, just like that. He walks over to the bathroom mirror and sees the deep bite marks still burning on his neck. From the kitchen, he hears the cheerful, rhythmic clinking of those white conch shell bangles as his wife cooks breakfast. And this perfectly captures his terrifying reality. Quote, he realized the woman making breakfast in the kitchen couldn't possibly be Kajal. Whoever or whatever was in his house was definitely not his wife. Section 4. The Legend of Shakchunni. Completely desperate at this point, Sanjit visits an old tantric, who immediately diagnoses the problem. Kajal has been possessed by a Shakchunni. Now, this isn't just your generic run-of-the-mill ghost. In Bengali folklore, a Shakchunni is the malevolent spirit of a woman who died before she could be married. Driven by extreme jealousy and unfulfilled desires, she possesses married women to essentially steal their identities and live out their lives. The tantric outlines some incredibly grim, terrifying stakes here. The spirit completely takes over the body and methodically drains the husband's blood night after night to weaken and eventually kill him. The warning is absolute. Any delay in stopping the spirit guarantees Sanjit's death. It's a literal ticking clock, and he is already trapped right inside its feeding cycle. Section 5. The Deadly Exorcism. Armed with this terrifying knowledge, Sanjit brings the tantric home in dusk. But guys, the ritual fails almost instantly. As the tantric begins chanting his mantras in the drawing room, the temperature just violently drops. Kajal's eyes turn blood red, her hair scatters wildly, and she starts growling like a cornered beast. She lunges, sinking her teeth directly into the tantric's neck just as the power cuts out. Imagine being in that pitch-black house. As the tantric screams echo through the dark, Sanjit begins backing away in absolute terror. But then, the entity turns its attention to him. He can hear her reversed feet dragging across the floor, making this horrible scraping sound. And somehow, her red sari actually shines in the pitch black. The story reaches its chilling climax right here, ending that night with a single, horrifying scream echoing out of the house. Section 6. A lingering haunting. The aftermath shows us that this single night of terror cemented a permanent legend. The horror spread like a literal contagion. On day 1, neighbors and police find Sanjit and the tantric dead. But on day 2, a 70-year-old neighbor, Mrs. Chatterjee, goes into severe shock after witnessing the whole event through her window. And then, by weeks 3, she suddenly dies under the exact same mysterious circumstances. Now here is the physical evidence that elevates this whole thing into a bizarre medical mystery. All 3 bodies, Sanjit, the tantric, and weeks later Mrs. Chatterjee, were found completely white. They were entirely drained of blood, bearing deep, unexplained bite marks. The doctors were totally baffled, for sure, but it perfectly matched the tantric's earlier warning about the Shakchunni's highly specific feeding methods. Following Mrs. Chatterjee's death, her family packed up and fled the neighborhood overnight. To this day, the area remains totally abandoned by them. But the legend, it persists. Locals still report looking up at the balcony of that old house in the dead of night. And what do they see? That ominous red sari just fluttering in the wind. And what do they hear? The sharp, unmistakable clink of white conch shell bangles piercing the absolute silence. So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this final thought. If you're ever lying awake and you hear the clinking of bangles in the dark, who is really listening? Sometimes local legends are born from anomalies just way too terrifying to ignore. Keep learning, keep questioning, and you know what? Maybe double check your locks tonight. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive.